Welcome to New on Netflix. This is an unofficial, monthly-ish look at the new stuff on Netflix with the two Robbies. It is something of an odd episode this month. You can either consider this a sort of a special treat or a filler, depending on how you want to approach these things. So, Rob, normally we've both seen everything, right? And we argue heartily about them. Tonight, it's a strange format whereby I've seen 3 new things, which I can tell you about, and then you were going to talk about 4 films. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, 4 films that I have seen on Netflix. Well, not on Netflix necessarily, but I've seen that are on Netflix that I would recommend to you if you've not seen.
Right. The first thing we're going to look at is Unicorn Store, and here is a clip.
You have come to the store, kids.
And I am the salesman.
Behold,
We sell what you need.
Unicorns? That was the only thing I ever wanted.
Okay, so I'm going to read a poem, which I've written for it. I know you like my poems, so here we go.
Yeah.
Hey, kids, I found something quite quirky. Brie Larson wants a unicorn. Boy, this looks perky. Rainbows and glitter and, harassment from her boss. You're bored already, kids? I must admit, I'm a bit lost. Goodness me, here's Samuel L. Jackson, no less. And now it's an episode of DIY SOS. Perhaps this isn't for you kids. This is for millennials like me. And of course, there's a love interest. Why wouldn't there be? Okay, well, I'll watch it. I'll give it a go. After all, Rob chose it. It would be rude to say no. But honestly, I'm really not laughing very much. I hope Rob's sitting through this too, the cheeky such and such. Actually, it's okay. It's likeable, I'd say. But for a film about rainbows, it's a little bit grey. So this film, right, it wants to be the sort of quirky, indie, Sundance kind of film. But to me, it just felt a little bit flat. It was a little bit sort of,
Right.
It was likable, but I didn't find it charming enough.
Okay, as I've got pretty much nothing to offer because I've not watched this, I'm just going to ask you about the different performances,
Yes.
which you liked. But so it's got a pretty all-star cast: Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, Joan Cusack, Bradley Whitford.
Yeah, there's quite a big part for a guy called Mamadou Ati. I think it's how it's pronounced.
Yeah,
And what I did like about it is I did enjoy the chemistry between Brie Larson and Mamadou Ati, and he was the sort of love interest, and I just felt they kind of worked quite well together. That was some of the sort of funny stuff. I did like there was a couple of scenes she works in this office as well as pursuing a unicorn. And I liked a couple of the scenes in the office. It felt a bit like that whole was a bit of a subplot that didn't really need to be there. It was just kind of making the point that she didn't really want to be fitting around the usual 9 to 5. She was kind of this failed artist. She'd rather be doing something more creative. Bits of that worked really well, had like shades of the US office, maybe something like that. But it just was it just didn't make me laugh enough, really. It was okay. I'll tell you who has seen this, Rob.
yeah, go on.
People on IMDB.
Well, of course they have.
Okay.
Hang on, how is this going to work this month? Because I can't do the.
You can't do the IMDB prediction,
No.
but I will reveal that the IMDB score is a 5.5 for this.
Oh, really?
So
That's
pretty low. Okay, Space Girl Sunday on IMDb. We always like to read out a 1 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10 score.
Yeah.
Because we like extreme views. I really wanted to love this movie. I went into it with an open mind and high hopes. As a fellow unicorn and magic lover, I get what she was going for. The whole keep the magic and inner child alive inside. But this inept, childish, embarrassing attempt was, well, all those things. I ended up hating the lead rather than rooting for her. Everything down to that stupid glittery string hanging off Mr. Jackson's head was just wrong. What was that?
Explain that bit.
He's
Come
sort
on.
of, there's a lot of glitter, and Samuel L. Jackson is the guy who's offering the unicorn, and so he's quite sort of dressed in quite a glittery way. So I think that's probably where that particular bit of anger came from.
Okay.
And the 10 out of 10,
Yeah.
Spots and Stripes, says, the film we never knew we needed. I'm not really sure what I was expecting from Unicorn Store, but just from watching the trailer, I was intrigued. I ended up loving it. Brie Larson was amazing, both in front of and behind the camera. Her remarkable chemistry with Samuel L. Jackson made this film extremely enjoyable to watch. Not only was it entertaining to the point I laughed out loud, but the message that this film holds is one I won't easily forget. So I, as usual, put myself somewhere in the middle of that, but it just... Normally I like that kind of film, the kind of, I guess it wants to be a sort of Little Miss Sunshine type film, that sort of quirky indie film, but it didn't quite do it for me. Sorry about that, Rob.
Can I ask you a final question before we move on? It says on online that it's a comedy fantasy. So, I mean, without spoiling anything, the fantasy element is because she's looking for a unicorn? That's the fantasy element?
It would spoil it if I gave away too much. The question throughout is, are unicorns real or not? And so she's been offered this unicorn. Will she get it? Won't she get it? And I can't really say more than that without it being too much of a spoiler. But
let's move on then.
Okay,
interesting.
So now it's time for you, Rob, to share a couple of films that are currently available on Netflix. Are these ones that I would like, or you just think that you like and you could tell me about regardless?
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
So let's start with there's some really obvious ones that I could choose. So like just picking some out. I mean, you've got things like the Back to the Future trilogy, you've got Gravity, you've got The Big Lebowski, these kind of, films that everyone's heard of. But if I pick a few that are perhaps slightly below the radar, it's a bit better. First film I'm going to talk about is a film called Black 47. So the 47 is like 1947. So, or even 1847. I don't know why I said that. It's about 1847. So it's about the Irish famine. It's a film I saw in a cinema, but it is a really bruising sort of quite stark drama, thriller drama, really, about a family who basically are persecuted by the occupying British army in Ireland. And it's all about how the forces and there's this one lone basically renegade fighting back. It's a very sort of classically told story of like one person taking the law into his own hands and fighting back. But I thought it was really well handled, really well done. It's got quite a sort of spare, sort of rural, pastoral sort of feel to it, set as it is in the countryside in Ireland. It's not set in Dublin or whatever. And it was a quick film. It's one of those films that you watch and you think that's great that they've not tried to string it out. It's an hour and a half. You really get a sense of the sort of injustices that are going on, but at the same time, it's not kind of dwelling on them. It's not a sort of social realist sort of attempts to kind of do a sort of Ken Loach or a Michael, like it's not kind of like politicized thing. It's more of a like, this is just a kind of reconstruction of how someone who was being basically oppressed within famine conditions might take matters into their own hands. I thought it was really well done. Not incredibly violent, actually. I would have thought you would have think from the plot synopsis I've just given, it would be quite a violent film, but actually there's only moments of extreme violence. But it's really well handled, and so I'd recommend that. Yeah.
So basically, Rob, you're saying this film, the key words I've taken out of this are oppression, famine, some extreme violence.
Yeah.
So is this family friendly? What's the sort of
No.
Okay.
It's not family friendly. If you don't want to see people like starving, being killed,
no, I don't really.
But that creates tension in any film. There's always a sense of conflict from those situations, and it's just I don't know. There's something about it that made it engaging. It didn't cloy. It didn't make it was as it was. It kind of was trying to show a bit of a historical perspective, but not go too deep into the I find a lot of historical films just too sparsely interesting because they're trying to tell the whole story, or just too frilly and not really historical. So this was quite a nice in between point between those things, and it actually, made sense.
Okay. Well, if I can be honest, I think it's unlikely I'm going to watch it. And as I don't wish to sound ungrateful for your suggestion, but the reality is, once Roberta and I have finally got the children into bed, what you want is a bit of light relief. And if I said to Roberta that we're going to watch a film about, and I quote, oppression, famine, with some extreme violence. Oh, and by the way, it's based in 1847. All right. She's going to say, do you mind if I have the tablet and I catch up on, I don't know.
Okay.
And you can watch that with your headphones on. That's what will happen.
Report back. Just try it. I mean, I'm not saying you will end up watching it. Just try that as an approach. You say, "Oh, Rob said that there was this really good film called Black 47."
Okay.
Just see what happens.
There's one thing that might turn things. Is Colin Firth in it?
No, it's
a no. Then it's a no.
Unknown actors in it.
What's your second one, Rob?
You want something a bit more upbeat, do you?
Could it be less upbeat?
Yeah, I've got one that's less upbeat than that.
Okay, go on then. Let me guess. This is about the Black Plague.
No, it's not. But it's about the world has frozen. You got to guess what it is. I'm sure you know this film. The world has frozen over, and a train barrels on across the bleak, snowy landscape. And
is it the Polar Express starring Tom Hanks?
No, it isn't the Polar Express starring Tom Hanks, but that's a very good guess. No, it is. I'm not going to say the name of it. I'm going to keep going for a second. The train barrels on. Towards the back of the train are the sort of working class people, the people who are, again, oppressed. And at the front of the train, which is where everyone wants to be, are all the sort of like nouveau rich, sort of like the elites. And it's basically a class allegory. A class war allegory. Do you know what it is yet? Have you got it? It's Korean.
Crumbs. Okay. I mean, I was gonna, when you start saying about the world's frozen over, I was gonna say, is it 2012? The disaster type.
No.
But now you're saying it's a class war allegory that's Korean and it's about oppression. and sorry, this is the upbeat one, is it?
No. Yeah, this is the upbeat one.
Right.
No, this is less upbeat. It's quite good. It's quite violent again.
Quite violent. Let me just write that down.
Snowpiercer. Have you heard of Snowpiercer?
Snowpiercer.
You've never heard of it? Okay, well, Snowpiercer was a really big cult hit, sort of like 2 or 3 years ago. It's a science fiction post-apocalyptic film. It's trying to kind of present an allegory about a bunch of people at the back of the train who are trying to fight to the front of the train to get control of it. And as they go through this train, you almost get like different worlds within each compartment of the train, like a sort of like drug-addled nightclub, a children's classroom, all kinds of other things. It's this kind of sort of panoply of different experiences as you move through. But obviously, as they move through, they have to fight their way through. So it's incredibly violent in places.
And presumably subtitled, is it as well?
No, because a lot it's Korean, but it's actually English language, which is weird. I know. So as they move, there is some subtitling. because I think there's some characters who don't have English as their first language. It's supposed to be like the masses of the world rise up against the sort of the rulers and the elite, and it's all about what happens when they get to the front of the train. So it's an interesting setup in the sense that you don't know what's going to happen when they get through, if they do get through. So it's really quite entertaining. It's quite visceral in places. There's some really interesting commentary and societal sort of takes on things, but it is, after all, an action film, and so it's not the kind of thing that is unengaging. It is the kind of thing that will grab you and keep hold of you. And I really recommend it if you're into that kind of absolutely zany premise, but actually interesting when you get down to what happens in the action. Kind of film. So yeah. Okay,
that sounds a little bit more appealing to me. I was more or less switched off until you said it's an action film, and then I kind of got it. I see what it's at. I thought it was going to be, a bit less appealing. Okay, so that is Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
And the other one, the first one was called Black 47.
Yeah.
Super. Okay, let's now go on to one of the TV series that I've been catching up on, which is Arrested Development, Series 5, Part 2. And here's a clip.
Why do we have to have a party every time someone in this family is released from prison?
Shall we get on our knees?
Oh, are we starting?
Despite all this, I think you and I are going to be able to get through this.
Come on, let's go.
Do you want to know why? The Bluth Boys, we find a way.
Okay, so Arrested Development is one of a few programs that gives you a synopsis at the start of each episode. It says the story of a wealthy family who lost everything and the young son who had no choice but to keep them all together. And it's basically an ensemble cast. A lot of them are now very kind of recognizable faces, but when the series first came out, many of them were less well known. And the kind of protagonist, I guess maybe the sort of straight man in it, is played by Jason Bateman, with quite a large sort of oddball family around him. And over the years, this has probably been one of my top 5 TV series of all time. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, big fan. So it's had a sort of a kind of long tail, really, but series 1 to 3 came out like 2003 through to about 2006, and it was one of those programs that critically was very popular, but it didn't really ever get an audience at the time. And what happened was that Fox, who was the TV channel, they kept cutting the number of episodes in the series. So the series 1 has 22 episodes, series 2 has 18, and series 3 has 13. And you sort of see that it starts getting a bit squashed. And eventually they just pulled the plug on it and said that was enough. And then there was this long gap. And then through a combination of things, I think a lot of it was to do with the kind of rise of streaming services and things like that. Series 4 came out, which was this slightly strange concept where it was there was an episode about each character, and by that point a lot of the actors had become quite well known, and so I suspect the idea was they didn't all have to be in the same place at the same time, so you kind of got an episode about each character and it kind of overlapped a bit. And then series 5, parts 1 and 2, is more or less back to the same way that series 1 and 2 were working. And I think the style of it, when it first came out, 2003, 4, 5, 6, was really quite unusual at the time because it was on Fox, so it's quite a big channel, but there was no canned laughter, there was no kind of studio set. It was more like a documentary style, and it was very fast, and there were loads of sort of throwaway background jokes and things like that. And the thing that I liked about it particularly was they had a narrator, and it was Ron Howard doing the narration. And what's quite unusual about that is that it meant that one thing that I imagine that we both really dislike is when a program or a film spends a long time explaining what's happening through dialogue. And it always sounds very clunky, but they didn't do that. They just had the narrator telling you what was happening, and that allowed them to jump between scenes, jump between all these different characters. And usually it had a sort of feeling almost of an old-fashioned farce about it. We've got lots of slightly chaotic things happening, and then eventually they're going to converge, and you can't quite see how. And it's deliberately quite contrived and ridiculous, and you finally get this sort of payoff at the end. But along the way, they have such strong characters. I think that's really what the series had. So
I should say, Robbie, that I have watched some of series 1 of this show, only really recently, because I missed the boat on it.
Yes,
and I regret it because I really enjoyed what I saw.
Well, you were too busy watching films about oppression in the in the famines of Ireland, weren't you? So, what did you think?
I really liked it. I must say I did take a little while to get used to the voiceover. I found it slightly grating for a little while, but then once I got used to it, it's basically as you've just said, like the central conceit of it is that is the way that the story is told, and so you don't have to worry. Yeah, as you say, the characterization is much more implicit and interesting. It's not. Yeah, so it works really well. I think you can always voiceovers can always really badly backfire in any kind of medium, but I think it really works. And I really liked the premise. I think it's hilarious. I think you can't really go wrong with that kind of premise. It can last a long time, and that's presumably why it's got this sort of longevity that we've seen. That like it's into its 5th series. But it's interesting what you said about a 4th series being quite different. What did you think about the sort of return then in the 5th series to the sort of first few? What did it compare well?
So you know that my favorite band, or one of my favorite bands certainly, is the Pixies.
Oh yeah.
And for many years I dreamed of them producing new material.
Yeah.
And then they did, and it was all right. It was in a similar style to the Pixies, but the risk is everything that was kind of groundbreaking, new, and original about it the first time around now isn't, and it kind of just reminds you of how good and original the first stuff was the first time around.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that about the latest Alan Partridge, unfortunately.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
So there were still lots of good jokes. It was good to see the characters back together, and there's not. I don't find much that I disliked about it, but it just didn't make me laugh quite as much the first time around. I'm still enjoying it. I still, to be honest, hope they produce more, because I'll happily just always watch an episode of Arrested Development. But the first series I probably watched a couple of times, and I very rarely do that. I usually just watch something once and think that'll do. But this, I can't see myself rewatching series 5.
Is there something about the fact that when you start out on a project, you've got this sort of like anarchic energy about whether you know whether it's going to be successful or not? And then once, as you said before, like the cast comes back together after having success in other projects.
Yeah.
Things, you just can't get that back because everyone's kind of slightly left it behind, but they kind of...
I think also maybe when you've got an idea for a series, you use every single joke you've got in the early on. And I don't want to keep comparing this to the Pixies, but their earlier stuff was probably their best because it was kind of years worth of songwriting all sort of put together. Okay, let's just have a quick look on some of the IMDb reviews. And the IMDb reviews are quite confusing because some people are reviewing the early stuff, some people are reviewing the later stuff.
Oh, of course, because it's one. Is it one record then for all of them?
It is, yes. So this is someone who left a review in 2013. Painfully unfunny, very disappointed, 1 out of 10. Now, they said, I've only just watched the first season, decided to watch the entire season 1 because I saw it has higher ratings than other favourite shows like Friends, It's Always Sunny, How I Met Your Mother, Big Bang Theory. I have to say, I'm extremely disappointed. This show is just painfully unfunny and not entertaining. Found the storyline confusing and boring. The only good thing about this series maybe are the actors, although I found most of the characters are annoying and get on my nerves. The joke's very forced and doesn't really make sense. Okay.
I'll be honest with you. I kind of see where that person's coming from. I don't agree with them, but I can kind of see why someone would think that. I think it's quite a shallow reading of it, though, because they've not really thought about... They've not thought of the comic potentialities of the characters, which are immense, really.
I think it does take a few episodes to get into it. It's kind of... When you become very affectionate about a TV program... when you watched it, I was sort of worried that you wouldn't like it because I sort of felt I wasn't going to say, the friendship's over or anything like that. But I did sort of think maybe I would think a bit less of you, and it's awful, isn't it? But I sort of feel.
I kind of feel that about people who, I've got a few things like that where they watch something and don't get it in the same way as you. But then I've done it the same with other people. So people have said that's a fantastic film or a fantastic show, and I've been like, I'm not really that fussed by it, and they've looked at me as scant, just like. Yeah, you can't do anything about that. At the end of the day, it's what you find really amazing. You're always going to feel tentative about sharing with others, aren't you? Because they might.
Yeah. I'm always a bit suspicious of people that don't like I'm Alan Partridge. I
can't understand it. I can't understand why people don't like things like that. But
I have to accept this is something I'm working on in my life. I need to accept that some people have different tastes to me, and that's okay.
Well, I do sometimes. You know, we often disagree on this show, so you know, it's all good. We'll get through it.
Okay, and this is another review. This is a 10 out of 10 one. But their headline is, it's all about the original run. The first 3 seasons were truly a landmark for TV entertainment, for comedy in general. They set the bar high for everything that followed. The 4th and 5th seasons, however, aren't even in the same league. It's not that they're unfunny, but it just seems like by now the creators are capitalizing on what made the first 3 seasons so great without putting an effort to develop the humor and take it further. An increasing portion of the newest episodes is taken up by flashbacks, accompanied by Ron's voiceover to explain things or to fill the gaps in the narratives, and it's just too much. I don't feel that strong. I personally do think they've put the effort in. I think these are all, you know, actors with a lot of other options, and the production team who are now very well established. So I feel it's the effort's put in. It's just, I think it's difficult to come back to something that was groundbreaking, but now doesn't look so groundbreaking, and to make it stand out from everything else.
Can I say something about Michael Cera? Is that his second name? I found it amazing just seeing him as a young boy, really. How he kind of then from that became this Hollywood star in a sense. And I just wanted to point out 2 roles that I really liked him in recently, which is that he was in Molly's Game. It was a brilliant cameo role, which is Aaron Sorkin directed a film about a gambler, notoriously, who sort of did a bit of a dodgy deal. He's this brilliant cameo as this unnamed character, so that's worth checking out. But also his ability to kind of, like, butter wouldn't melt is just unparalleled. I've not seen that in the same way as in the first few episodes. As I said, I've only watched the first few of this show, but just brilliant, sort of deadpan teenage. Yeah, I don't know, just really works really well. Yeah,
I don't think there's a weak performance in the whole thing.
No.
I think they're all really well cast, and I just think they put in great performances, and the characters are just so strong. And I don't want to keep rambling on about this because we need to move on. But another TV series I love is Dad's Army, and some of the jokes in Dad's Army now are a bit tired, but the characters are so strong that you're happy just to watch them sat around chatting. And it's kind of the same with Arrested Development. I just like the characters.
Yeah, and you can spend time in their company. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so now, Rob, if you want to give me another oppressive Korean action thriller, if you want to give me, please, a couple more suggestions of films currently available on Netflix that you think are worth a watch.
Okay, so this one's a bit more obvious, and I think it did actually win the Best Picture Oscar, so it's very obvious in some sense. But I think maybe a lot of people haven't seen it still, and it's Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. Birdman is a film starring Michael Keaton as a sort of washed-up ex-superhero film star. So he used to play a superhero called Birdman, and he's taking on a role in a sort of off-Broadway performance in New York. What makes the film such an amazing watch is that it's pretty unbroken in the way that it is filmed. So you can watch almost the entire film without a cut. Camera, as I've talked about on this, I like a swooning camera. Remember when I talked about Roma on this program? And
a sweeping shot.
Yes, indeed. Well, this is one of the similar kinds of films like that. It's a tremendously put together spectacle. It's existential. It talks about what happens when someone fails and how they try and build themselves up again, and how the people around them respond to that. And it's just so brilliant to watch. I really recommend it. And the metaphors that are implicit within it about what it means to be a human and a superhero, or what superpower actually is, are really powerful, I think. And if you haven't seen it, it's got a really, really good cast. It's got Michael Keaton, Emma Stone, a really good performance as Michael Keaton's daughter. It's got Edward Norton as one of the other actors. I've forgotten who else is in it, but yeah, it's got a really good cast. There's some truly shocking bits as well. You might think, that's just following someone around. That could be quite boring, but actually it works really well. It's funny in a lot of places. And it's as I say, it's quite metaphysical. It's talking about what human nature is and who we are and what makes us feel certain things. Definitely worth checking out. Fully recommend it.
No, I have seen that. That's one of the ones I have seen. I enjoyed it. The main thing, it was a couple of years ago I saw it, but the main thing that I really liked was the drumming. There's kind of this really powerful score, and a lot of it, as you said, is these long shots without a lot of cuts, and it just really kept the pace up of that.
If you aren't looking carefully, it does look like one cut, but actually, in reality, it is more than one cut. And unlike a film like Russian Ark, which was literally just one cut, it doesn't have any cuts at all. So yeah, I would. I mean, it's Inarritu, who one of the other ones that I could have chosen was The Revenant, who the same director, and that has that similar sort of cosmic scale of looking at a landscape or a stage or an area where you kind of see it. It's larger than life. It doesn't feel like it's a small space. It opens out. I don't know. I'm just blathering now, but yeah, that's
fine, Rob. We like a bit of blather.
Good. Well, I can provide that in spades.
Blathering in Spades. That's the name of your autobiography, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
And your final recommendation, your fourth film.
Oh, you want my final one?
Oh, that was Birdman, by the way, in case we need to repeat what that was. That was Birdman.
Birdman, yeah. Or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. I don't know what that quite means. Don't get that subtitle, but there you go. The next one I'm going to go for is Moneyball. So Moneyball is written by Aaron Sorkin, who I've already mentioned in this podcast, but is quite a famous writer. Wrote The West Wing, wrote The Social Network, about the setting up of Facebook. But in this film, it stars Brad Pitt as the manager of a baseball team. And you might think, I'm not into baseball, that's going to be crap. I'm not going to be interested in that. There's not an awful lot of baseball in the film, which is an oddity to say, but it's less about the baseball and more about how this individual, Brad Pitt's character, brings in this new person into the baseball club to rethink what they're doing. If you like films that are edgy, they're kind of trying to talk about how you can get greater success in a certain area. If you can look at the stats and go, well, what isn't working here? Why haven't these people been performing in the way they want to? This makes it sound like a really geeky film, but it's in fact one of the most energizing and energetic films you'll see about one person's ability to change their thinking and change the mindset of those around them. Jonah Hill is brilliant in it. If you associate Jonah Hill with Superbad and crappy, high school gross out comedies, you really need to rethink that, because he's actually a genuinely good actor, and now he's a director because he's directed Mid-90s, which came out a few weeks ago. So he's surprisingly subtle performer who is able to actually show the thinking behind the character. He isn't like sort of this one note sort of high school character. So all of this is wrapped up. It's all about how the Oakland Athletics, this baseball team, go on this big winning run, but how they go about it and the individual stories within that, I think, are really convincingly told, and it's just so well written. The characters feel real. The sort of old guard, the people who are trying to stop the sort of new thinking coming into the organization, are really, really well drawn. Yeah, if this might not be for everyone, admittedly. If you don't have any interest in baseball and you don't have any interest in how organizations and teams improve, you won't probably have much to watch here. But I really enjoyed it. I really think it's really well written.
I might actually watch that, Rob. Just because I really enjoyed The Social Network.
Yeah,
it was really good. Just very well. It was well written, but I just thought it was well done generally. I like The West Wing, so yeah, all right. I might give that a go.
Yeah, I think I think I could have chosen 4 or 5 other films on this list. I mean, I used to bitch and moan about how Netflix didn't have enough films that I wanted to see on it. I think I've proved myself wrong by about a 15-20 minute look at it today, because there's just so many that A, I haven't seen, I really want to, or B, I have seen and think are great. So I'm not on commission from Netflix, but that is what I found. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. Right. Final thing we're going to look at is the OA.
Yeah.
Let's have a clip.
She's our daughter.
Who are these people?
But she's never seen us before. 7 years ago, when she went missing, she was blind.
Mom?
Do you remember any of the events that led up to your disappearance?
Okay, so the OA is about someone called Prairie Johnson, played by Britt Marling. And in the first episode, she reappears. She's been missing for 7 years, great rejoicing and celebration. But when she gets back, she won't tell her adopted parents where she's been. It's kind of this mystery, and we gradually get bits of information. She's calling herself now the OA. She has these scars, and she can now see, despite being blind when she disappeared. Now, it's the second series, I think it is, that's being put onto Netflix recently. I just watched the first episode of the first series. And you'll be pleased to know, Rob, that I've written a poem.
Right, okay, here we go.
My favourite thing about the OA is the length of the intro, I must say. 57 minutes before the credits start. Must be a record that sets it apart. It's nicely shot, the acting is fine, but it's a bit earnest for me. It crosses a line. Give us a smile, give us a smirk, pay a comedy writer to do a bit of work. Like when she says, "My name's the OA." No one says, "Sorry, love, Chloe, did you say?" At one point, which could have been comedy gold, someone asks, "What's the only way to fight the cold?" The answer, apparently, to this is to become colder than it is. But in fact, the answer is a nice thick coat, or perhaps a fleece made from a furry goat, or running on the spot or wearing a hat, a hot water bottle or cuddling a cat, one of those hand pouches with metal discs that you squeeze, or choosing a hot drink from a selection of teas. I went off a bit there. I think I've been reading too many Julia Donaldson children's books. I think that might be what's going on. I really wasn't talking about the OA at all by the end of that.
No.
But I think you've seen a bit of this, haven't you?
I saw the first episode and I thought it was genuinely brilliant. And do you know what? I'm going to make a comment about the earnestness. I don't think there's enough earnestness in the world. There is in some places, but I like Britt Marling. I think that's her entire oeuvre, right? If you look at all of the work that she's done, I'm an absolutely massive raving fanboy of her, by the way. So be careful what you say, Rob.
Okay.
If you look at all the films and TV shows and things like that she's made, all of them have been interesting. All of them have been trying to do something that is quite different to how most people think, if you see what I mean. So they go beyond. So, for instance, The Sound of My Voice, which was like her first film that she was really not famously in, but, was a big role for her, is about a cult that meets in a basement, and whether they're actually from the future or whether they're just like stark-staving mad.
Stark
how do you say it? Stark raving
mad. Okay. I thought it was about rats.
It leaves the question open. It says that if there was such a thing, if there was a cult that existed that claims to be from the future, but there was no proof either way, it leaves it open and sort of says to you, well, yes, of course you all think that this is mad. They're obviously not from the future. But then it presses you and it says, but actually, what if they were? It kind of goes along with a conspiracy theory. And that's what I think I like about her, the kind of stuff she gets involved in, like this. Like, it's all a bit mad, but it's interesting in its madness. It's trying to kind of like push and prod and say, why is this not okay? Like, what's the thing that we don't like about this? While at the same time having that level of earnestness to say, oh yeah, actually, we kind of want to see what we can pull off and what we can make you believe. So that's my little...
Someone called Kylie Faye on IMDB. Hi, Kylie, if you're listening. Unlikely. She gave it 10 out of 10. Poetic, haunting, and beautiful. This show may not be for everyone. However, if you're intrigued by deep, energy-filled, powerful works of art, then I couldn't recommend this more. Sure, on the surface, people can nitpick about minute and overall insignificant details, perhaps in regard to the acting, which I find to be impeccable, or the pace, which is a very superficial observation. If one's analysing those things, they're missing the point. Anyone who's seeking a show with true depth, this is for you. It's one of those masterpieces that brings out something deep in you that makes you change your ways of thinking. This is not a show to pay half attention to or to have on for background noise. It will pull you into its vortex. If you enjoy cinema, that can truly move you to the core, like Into the Void, Inception, or Requiem for a Dream. Shake your perception of reality. Please give this a chance. It is a true work of art. I think that's what you were saying, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I've already seen the one episode, but I mean, the reason I started talking about the other ones is because I haven't seen it. Part of the reason I think I didn't watch the OA this month isn't because I didn't want to, it's because I kind of want to save it and like savor it. I have what can I say? I've got deep feelings about the work of this actor. I think she's doing really interesting things, and she works with this director. I always forget his name. He's got like a hard to pronounce name. What's his name again?
I have no idea. However, a dumb person's idea of a smart show. This is a 1 out of 10 review. I wanted to like this. I really did. But this show meanders along with no point but to fluff the main actor's writer's ego to making a paranormal show that doesn't amount to much and insults the viewer. Instead, we're subjected to several episodes of Family Guy-style cuts and bizarre plot points which the show contradicts. If you decide to watch it, so feel good that you can watch the first and last episode only and not really miss anything important.
Okay, well, I've found out the name of that director. It's Zal Batmanglij.
Great. I'll write that down. So just our usual feature, my favourite feature, if I'm honest, is Rob guesses the IMDB score.
Okay, I'll see if I can get
obviously based on one episode, because that's all you've seen so far.
I think this show is the kind of show that will tempt a lot of pseudo people into watching it. But actually, if you think about how populist IMDb is, it'll probably be more like lower because people don't get it or they don't really want to get it. Or
what's a pseudo person?
You know, it's like you know the Private Eye thing, Sude's Corner, where it's like,
oh, I'm with you. Yes.
Yeah. That wasn't the very, I didn't explain it very well. I'm going to go with 6.3.
7.8. I think you're
seriously.
I think you're a bit rusty, Rob. Also, remember that generally TV series get better reviews. I don't know why that is. I'm sure we can work it out, but they seem to get higher scores than films. So there you have it.
It's because people rate them more. I don't know.
I think people tend to only bother reviewing a TV series that they've actually got into, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. If you're going to watch a Brit Marling film and you want to get into Brit Marling's work, and sorry to go on about this, you should probably start with Another Earth, which is a really interesting take on alternative worlds theory and all that kind of stuff.
Is it on Netflix?
I don't know. I imagine it's probably not.
Well, then why are you talking about it, Rob?
Well, because things exist outside Netflix, Rob. We've got to admit this. I mean, I know it's hard to understand, but Netflix.
I'm trying to find us a niche, and you're stepping outside my niche.
But the niche is talking about
the niche. Anyway, right. We're done. What are we going to do next time, Rob? We've got a couple of ideas.
Next time we're going to have a slightly Earth-themed theme. theme. Behind the Curve is this film about flat earthers, people who believe the Earth isn't round, which looks really funny and interesting, or maybe it's disturbing. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. And the other one is we're going to try and do is The Wandering Earth, which is a sort of massive box office Chinese hit, and has been sort of hailed as this kind of breakout hit for Chinese cinema and the rest of the world. So it's probably about something science fiction-y, I expect. So yeah.
We'll probably pick a TV series as well, but we're certainly going to do Behind the Curve and Wandering Earth. Well, let's say thank you very much. Thank you to Kevin, who does our makeup. Thank you to Maureen, who does sound mixing for us, and Eileen does a bit as well. And that's it.
Oh, hang on. What about Iris?
Iris.
She does your hair, Rob. You've got to mention her.
Thanks, Iris. Bye.
Bye.